There's been so much in the public domain this time around. Just some couple of days back, Fayose took the fight to the doorsteps of the EFCC when he showed up with his bags. And the question on the mind of everybody, most Nigerians as a matter of fact, is why? What is different from Fayose? Why is Fayose different from Babachi Lawal, who had the same allegations, was at the EFCC, but was released on the same day? Why is Fayose's case different?
Well, I think the EFCC should be in a better position to answer that question. My own attitude really is that anybody who is accused of corruption, who is accused of abuse of public office, or is accused of misappropriation of public funds, should be ready to submit him or herself to the relevant anti-corruption agencies if requested to do so. So to that extent, I do not see anything quite abnormal in the invitation extended to Fayose, which in any case he has dramatized in his own way, which also sends a kind of signal out there that our ruling classes don't take this anti-corruption war quite seriously. I think it's all more about drama. They know from experience that you are rigged, you are charged to court. There's a lot of razzmatazz, and then within a short period of time, nothing is heard again. So the fact that an ex governor could don an EFCC I'm here vest when being accused of corruption, it doesn't show that he is quite sober. It doesn't show that, because even if the allegations against you are not true, it's still weighty enough that you are even being accused of those things. So it's not something that you trivialize in that kind of sense. Then, of course, the issue you raised about
Babachi Lawal,
Babachi
former
Lawal,
SGF.
of course, that would also tend to confirm the view of some Nigerians that the anti-corruption war itself it's one-sided at that, really. So usually I don't like to dwell too much on that, because for me, if you're accused of corruption, just go and clear yourself, because there's also a way in which the ruling classes try to box us to a corner and make it look as if it is right to be corrupt. What is wrong is for you, to try. They're not even ashamed, because somebody is accused of corruption and they say, "Oh, it's selective." Well, it might be selective, but go and clear yourself, first, because you can only talk of persecution in the anti-corruption war where you yourself, you are not guilty of corruption and you are being falsely accused. So if from your own side you are being falsely accused, and from the other side those who are actually perpetrating corruption are not being tried, then you could talk about selective or something. But like I said, what that would reinforce is that, and of course that is the major challenge with the anti-corruption war of this government.
Exactly. That brings me to the next question, which is the sincerity of this government in its fight against corruption, so to say, sir. Would you say that the government has actually been, the present APC government has actually been sincere? Because it seems to be deodorizing those in its fold, so to say, while, persecuting the opposition. How sincere is the government, sir?
Well, I don't think any government that rests on the pillar of capitalist policies, policies that discriminate against the poor, can actually fight, corruption, sincerely, because corruption has an ideological root in Nigeria. It is rooted, in the system of governance that we practice, because ab initio, we have a system that puts the resources of society, the wealth that are collectively produced, in the private pockets of a few. So, for me, for example, privatization of our national assets is an act of corruption. It even runs contrary to what the Constitution says. Because if you go to the Constitution, if you go to chapter 2 of the Constitution, and it's often quoted by Femi Falana, senior advocate of Nigeria, that it actually says that, government should do everything to protect national assets, own these resources on behalf of the people. But you sell it to private hands, and then, it's like when, these article emerged as presidential candidates, one of the issues being raised by the other side, which I've been seeing, is, rendered many Nigerians jobless, introduced privatization and so on. And I kept saying, bad enough. But this government that has been there for the past 3.5 years, what have you done to reverse, that trend? So when you continue with anti-poor policies, it's an act, of corruption itself. Corruption is not just about the fact, that you have stolen or you have not stolen. But aside from that, it's also the fact that many things are happening that border on acts of corruption. And I will give an example. And this is not just about individuals being accused now, like the Babiki you talked about, or Maina, or the rest of them. Now, one of the reasons why Nigerians were galvanized into voting out the Jonathan government was because of the fuel subsidy scam. Subsidies were being paid to fictitious companies. Subsidies were paid to companies that didn't even import, the fuel and all those kind of things. And this government said, there will be no subsidy regime. But we do know that as of today, the government is paying subsidy. Yeah. Because the only reason why fuel price has not gone up is because fuel is being subsidized. Yeah. Because the logic of our dependence on importation for oil that we consume locally, for petroleum products that we consume locally, is the fact that anytime the price of petroleum products goes up in the international market, it affects, the importation costs, for the importers of fuel, all the costs they usually talk about, the landing costs and all those kind of things. So usually when fuel price goes up in the international market, they want to increase the fuel price here, and they complain that they are being sold, that they are selling at a loss. So to avert that, and because of sensitivity of oil to our economy, that people would always protest when there's fuel price, then government now pays, subsidy. Because this, our current budget, was based on about $50 per barrel. And now we'll be selling at $70 to $84, per barrel in the international market. Government is paying subsidy, but to whom are these subsidies being paid? We are not being told. It's not clear, and that is why we've not been able to see the effects of the gains we are making from the increase, of fuel price in the international market on our economy. Because at the end of the day, it's all about this. So for me, that is an act of, lack of transparency, bordering, on corruption, because definitely these subsidies are going, to some companies. So the whole question about fighting corruption, really, yes, war against corruption it's welcome. Yes, corruption, but again, you even begin to look at it. Are we really dealing with the roots of corruption in terms of independence of, the anti-corruption agencies? As a matter of fact, strengthening the Nigerian police. Because in a normal society, you don't need all these super anti-corruption agencies because we are fighting corruption. And until we get to that point. So for me, I would take a government very seriously that says it's fighting corruption. If that government empowers, the police to the extent that, they are well remunerated, they are well paid, they are respected by the society. If they engage in corruption, people would ask them questions. What else do you need? You are well paid, you are well taken care of, and that. So we need a situation whereby a sitting president, a sitting governor can be interrogated by the police for alleged acts of corruption. But that cannot happen if the immunity clause is not removed from corruption. So a government that says it's really fighting corruption, the first thing it should do is to sponsor an executive bill for the removal of immunity, clause, to allow for investigation, for questioning why you are still there. Most of the monies that the governors allegedly steal actually come from what they call the security votes. Or sometimes when they take bribes from contractors and the rest of them. But these ones that run into billions, is the money, is the security votes. In some states, it's half a billion naira. In some, billions. It's so bad that we don't even know. They don't even disclose what they take as security votes. So that, and the security vote is security votes. If you paid rain catchers to stop rain during a presidential visit, it's part of security. It's as bad as that. So they don't account for it. And then they take it and launder it and do. So most of the money. So the way you can stop that, actually, is for you to block that channel, and that is for you to remove immunity, clause. For those who are coming in, who are saying they want to fight corruption, that would be the only way you can be taken seriously. We need to take our resources back from those who are stealing it, but we need to prevent the process, the institutional weaknesses that allow those resources to be taken. That has been the major bane of the anti-corruption war, because it's like a circle. This government is there. There's no government in Nigeria, to one extent or the other, that has not said it waged war against corruption. Obasanjo did. Some governors were thrown into jail, and the Attorney General of Police was thrown into jail. Yar'Adua came, so all of them, one way or the other, pay this lip service to corruption, but it continues to haunt us. So we must also look at how we can plug the loopholes that make it possible, and the few of them is what I've identified in terms of this fighting corruption. So it's a sing song. They don't take it serious. They know that you could steal 2 billion, you go to court, you go and do plea bargain, you keep the rest, and so on. So we do have a lot of institutional weaknesses as is well.
Good. Now that takes us to the next transition. Nigeria is entering into another transition, so to say, and we're extracting the alternatives that are before Nigerians. One question that bothers Nigerians, as a matter of fact, is are they better off than where they were before the advent of this present ruling APC government, so to say? I mean, for 20 years, so to say. Are Nigerians better off? Should they be looking at alternatives at this point in time, sir?
Definitely. Nigerians are not better off, and they should be looking in the direction of alternatives, because the alternatives that present themselves now as alternatives are actually no alternatives, because it's just same of same, and the ruling class has a way of how do I put it now, saving itself. And it's not just happening today, it happened under the military. Anytime you have a government that is becoming so unpopular that you might have a mass revolt, then the ruling class quickly comes together and then makes a U-turn, stage a coup, and then buy some time for themselves. It's the same thing that we had in 2015, that government had become discredited, and people really wanted alternative, and they knew that as at that time the only alternative that would sell was an alternative that is close to sainthood. So they needed to go and bring Buhari back, despite the fact that he had said he was no longer going to run, because they knew he had this so-called anti-corruption image, and
exactly.
Nigerians voted for that. And now you could also see that there is discontent. Like you said, we're not better off. You see, the indices of being better off do not lie in all these figures that are bandied. The inflation rate is this, the GDP is that. The indices are those things that affect the people in those crucial areas where you could talk about the healthiness of a society.
That's right.
The healthiness of the people: health, education, infrastructure, and the rest of them. What are happening in our hospitals now border on tragedy. I was just discussing with an uncle this morning who lost a brother who had just gone through surgery in the federal teaching hospital, and then doctors went on strike 4 days after. So we're still talking of doctors going on strike 20 years or 19 years or whatever into our so-called democratic rule. So we're not better off. So we should be looking at alternatives. Now the problem here now is also the fact that the people usually would want alternative, and they will also know what they do not want. But sometimes they're in a dilemma, and I think this is a challenge for new parties, or at least parties that are radical leaning.
Exactly.
Because that you're a new party does not mean you are different from those who are there if you don't have alternative ideas. Usually the people would not want a particular government, but at the same time they are thinking we need another strong party to help us dislodge these ones that we don't want. So that is why we often find ourselves in a kind of cycle In Osun State, for example, there was displeasure with the APC government.
Yeah.
The people were clearly not happy. They felt the government had not, performed. The government felt it has performed, but where it borders on the ordinary peoples, they were not happy with that government. They wanted another government. You ask yourself, why then did they vote for, PDP? But it wasn't just about the fact that PDP spent money. It was also because people felt that the one that is strong enough to help us dislodge this one is the PDP. Now the new parties have to reckon with this psychology of our people.
So what should the new party focus on? Reorientating Nigerians in terms of this psychology or
the new parties need to also deliver alternative messages to our people. There's nothing that you will go out to say there that the people have not heard about. In 2003, I was in politics as a senatorial candidate of the National Conscience Party under Chief Gani Fawemi. In most cases, people didn't even want to listen to us until we invoked the name of Gani. And they would say, oh, you should have told us that you are Ghanaian people. Okay, we'll listen to you, because they are naturally hostile towards the political class, who, since post-independence days, have made promises. So they have heard and seen, these promises. The critical question will be, what difference would you make?
That's right.
I think if a new party goes out there to say that, as president, our government would drop immunity clause, that me as your president, the police will be free to question me anytime I'm suspected of corruption, it would make sense to our people. If you stand on the podium and you say, we will fight corruption, the people just do like this. They've heard that before.
Cool.
As fella would say, now old story be that. Now old news be that. Old news. Now old news be that. If you stand on the podium and you say, I will provide electricity, people sometimes they will not even believe you. They will think, do you want to perform magic? But if you talk about the fact that we'll begin now to look at alternatives, wind energy and other things like that, it connects with the people. If you are looking at infrastructure, it's not as if our governments don't build roads. We need to consider that. But they build roads that are substandard because some of the roads are built based on political patronage. We need to settle ourselves, so we need to pave this road in one local government. You give it to the leader of the party in that local government, who does not have anything to do with road engineering, collects the money, gives it to another person, and then... So the new parties, if they want to really provide alternative, must be ready to have frank dialogue with our people. We need to make up our mind. Do we want this system? Do you want good roads, or do you want patronage? If you want good roads, we can have good roads. Our ministries of works can build good roads. 2 of the best roads in Lagos were built under direct labor. The Ijaye-Jakara Road, and I happen to know this because I lived in that axis before, and I challenge your crew to visit that road. That stretch of road from Ijaye bus stop down to Jakara has one of the best drainages in Lagos. It rarely gets flooded when it rains, and because of that, the road itself had endured. The potholes are not as terrible as some of the roads that have been built after that particular year. It was built by direct labor. I suppose under maybe Marwa's government or so. The first dualized Lagos-Ikorodu road was built by direct labor. And that road was still standing as at the time they now decided to introduce BRT.
Chilling.
The BRT that was introduced was not as if a new road was constructed. They just created BRT
Boundaries
out of the existing. That road was built with direct labor, which means that if we invest in our ministries of works, have belief in our engineers, they can actually deliver on quality roads for us. So on the long run, we have to choose whether we want to satisfy the interests of the political godfathers or the interest of our own people on the long run. Now people say to have good roads, you have to go to the Julius Bergers of this world because they have the best technology. But it's even not necessarily so again because they themselves have become part of the patronage system. So why don't we also say that, okay, our educational system, our educational institutions who have faculties of engineering will now begin to involve with them. So the point I'm making really is that people will not embrace new parties just because they are new or just because they are dissatisfied with the old order. They want to see what this new order would really bring. And it will be a long race. The worst thing is not to start that race. So I'm happy that younger elements who have radical leanings are coming up, Showore and all the rest of them. It's quite encouraging, because you cannot run away from also the mood of the society, the general feeling of the people that if other democracies are having, younger leaders, why should our own be different? But our younger leaders must also be younger leaders, of ideas. What is not just enough. Yes, dissatisfaction would always be there. So we should not think that it is that dissatisfaction that would easily make people, jump up. We need a process, of building, a process of being with the people themselves and really understand, the people, so that we speak with the people and not for the people.
You talked about the mood of the people, so to say, and in recent times, Nigerians have seen a kind of, we say another strategy where the ruling elites introduce vote buying, which is a new strategy now. And because of the deep poverty within the system itself, people are disoriented. I mean, how can we gauge the mood of the people in this instance to effect the kind of change they actually wanted? Are Nigerians really ready?
Nigerians are ready. It has to do with the mentality that has been created. When I was contesting as a NCP candidate, I went to campaign in Maza area. And our campaign was like manual campaign. Sometimes we go from shop to shop, house to house. And I was campaigning to a lady who asked me what I brought. And I said, our party don't give anything. We don't have anything. So parties too must stand with their conviction. We must not get disappointed that people are asking for money. Let there be parties that refuse to give. So you make a statement. Revolution can happen within seconds, within hours. It may look like things are not possible. Something little will trigger a radical change of mood that in fact parties will bring money. People, you all used to say that take the money and vote for your conscience. But we'll get to a stage one day that Nigerians will bring the money, you'll bring 20,000, they will throw petrol at you with your money. And I'm telling you this, it will get to that stage. So we should not, give up.
There's one piece of advice that you give to Nigerian youth at this point in time.
That advice will be that they've served the old exploitative order enough. They should look in the direction of alternatives that are better than what we have now. It doesn't matter if those alternatives don't win today. If they lose today, they will win tomorrow. But let us at least begin to build that consciousness that things can be different in our society. If we don't build that consciousness, we will not have genuine change in our society. So now we really appreciate the insightful analysis. Thank you very much. You're welcome.